Apocalyptic wildfires are just the beginning, a Nobel Prize winner tells us. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. And on the line with us, an extraordinary man, senior member of the UN IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the Huffington Foundation Professor of Economics and Environmental Studies at Wesleyan University, the 2007 recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize, Dr. Gary Yohe. ClimatePower2020.org is his website. Dr. Yohe, welcome to the program. I understand that, I'd like to get your take on what's going on with these wildfires. I'm in Portland, Oregon. I'm looking out the window right now, and I can't see more than a quarter mile. It's nuts what's going on out here.
It truly is. Thank you all for finding me and being in touch. What is going on out on the West Coast, in Oregon and Washington State and in California with the fires is really quite extraordinary. You all have lived with fire seasons for most of your lifetimes, I think. There are a lot of reasons for forest fires, and we can talk about that. But the real question is, why is this year so spectacularly different? And spectacular is a hyperbole, just meaning it stands out. It's really an anomaly. And I think a lot of it can be blamed on climate change, and a particular growing manifestation of climate change that began a couple of years ago, but has really started to manifest itself. And that is to say, as the planet warms, it generates a lot of different sorts of impacts that generate a lot of sorts of sources of risk. One of them is heat, and therefore heat waves. Okay, that's fine. Out of heat waves come droughts. We know quite a bit about that. Out of that comes dying of forests because of bark beetles that don't die over the winter because the winters don't get cold enough. And that happens. Unusual cyclones off the west coast of Mexico, creating weather conditions that promote over northern California enormous storms of dry lightning, where instead of 10s or 20s of these strikes in a particular location in a storm, you get 1,000 or 2,000 of them, each one of which can start a fire. So my point is, and it goes up the coast as well, that all of these things that I just described are on the extremes of the distribution of the impacts of climate change. Unfortunately, it's a perfect storm. They're all happening at the same time, so that the fires are just absolutely extraordinary. There are 4 out of the biggest 5 fires in the history of California burning right now. Washington State's fires. Oregon, I've heard on the TV people said we never could have imagined a fire episode where 500,000 people would be either asked to evacuate or on an evacuation watch. And that's what's different, and I think the climate is to a large measure the change in it, the rationale and the reason behind it.
We know that there have been minor climate incidents. For example, large parts of the central and central plains area of the United States, apparently around 600-700 years ago, went through a minor climate event that drove some native tribes together, and there's a whole history around that. And then in some ways the ecosystems changed. But I'm wondering, are we looking at the beginning of a trend toward basically a different kind of environment, that the trees that are burning right now are not adapted to this new environment where the vintners here in Oregon are saying that the grapes are ripening 2 weeks early. Basically, the season's become 4 weeks longer this summer. So these trees clearly aren't dealing with it well. They're getting wiped out. Are we going to have a different kind of landscape? Are we going to become like the high desert of northern Arizona, for example? Or is this some sort of a normal transition? And I use that word normal advisedly, in like the 50,000 year scope of climate change. We've been through a lot of different climate changes over the years. Are we eventually going to reach a new normal, and is it going to involve decades of this kind of destruction of the existing flora?
Lots of questions there. Short answer is yes. We haven't. The planet has seen a large number of climate changes, and it has driven changes in animal habitat and vegetation, sea ice, all sorts of things. The thing that has made this different since the Industrial Revolution, and particularly since 1950, is the pace of the change. Natural causes hardly ever cause these sorts of dramatic and multiple vectors of these sorts of dramatic changes occurring in widespread areas across the globe. And that trend has accelerated over the last 5 or 10 or 15 years, so that, for example, this July, there are 25 different locations around the world, including you guys and in Colorado, but Siberia and northern part of Russia, that set records, all-time records on temperature. And that means that the changes that you describe are happening faster than they happened 600 years ago or 6,000 years ago. A good deal of them can be attributed to human activity and the burning of fossil fuels on the planet. And in terms of a new normal, I don't think this is the normal transition anymore. And I don't know anyone who would be brave enough to venture a description of what the long-run equilibrium, let's just call it that, of after we run out of fossil fuels and concentrations of greenhouse gases stabilize and temperature stabilize. I don't know anybody who can answer that question.
We have just about 2 minutes until we're going to hit a hard break here. Is this a linear process? It seems like it's almost a log process, like, you know, that things are not following a straight line. They're not getting, 5% worse each year. They're going 5% worse, then 20% worse, then 60%, something. Yeah. How rapidly is this happening, and what should we be expecting as we go into the next decade with regard to these forest fires and floods and droughts elsewhere in the country?
Right. So that's a great question. And Louisiana and Mississippi and Florida Panhandle are getting an unusual hurricane that's just decided to get lost and not move very fast. So it's dropping feet of water over the course of 2 or 3 hours, and it's going to continue for a while. But you're exactly right. It's not linear. I don't think it ever was linear, but even an exponential curve with a small exponent can look like it's almost linear. Exponential is one explanation, but it's really not. There's something buried in the statistics that's called regressing towards the tail rather than regressing towards the mean. And extreme weather events have adopted that sort of behavior, and it's easiest to describe it as it seems like every time you think the worst thing has ever happened, it's that this year, 2020, is the worst fire that Oregon has ever seen. You can't guarantee that that's true. The worst fire may yet be coming, and it's now more likely than it used to be that is, in fact, is coming. Until you, of course, run out of a really sad fact.
Until you run out of trees.
Burn themselves out because you run out of fuel.
Right, and once they burned all the trees and all the houses. It's amazing. Right. Dr. Gary Yohe. Yeah, amen. Winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, the Huntington Foundation Professor of Economics and Environmental Studies at Wesleyan, senior member of the IPCC. Dr. Yohe, it's an honor to speak with you. Thank you.